What's the most outrageously expensive thing you've seen in person? The set designs for fashion shows. When I was working as a scenic carpenter, I was always amazed at the amount of money spent on scenery that will go right into the trash for events that last 30 minutes to a couple of hours. We covered an empty warehouse floor in Manhattan with something like 50,000 square feet of beveled oak boards in one instance. Material costs aside, we had a crew of around 20 guys making at minimum $25/HR working for days around the clock to make it happen. The same people attending these shows will post on social media about environmental waste and global warming. My small company is in a niche market. Barney's of New York called in one day and ordered 20 items. We usually sell 2 a month and have a 1-week lead time for prep and shipping. They needed them delivered next day in New York for set building. It was odd shutting the company completely down to do one order then drive it myself from South Carolina to Long Island, but damn did I charge well to do it. Also, some asshat tore the side mirror off my van going into the Lincoln Tunnel and a cop literally told me to deal with it on the other side of the tunnel. So I never saw that guy again and had to drive 800 miles sans mirror. As a woodworker, I would have killed to take home any amount of that material. Do you do that after the show? A 12-year-old Russian kid who came to stay at a summer camp I worked at, that has a 64,000 pounds Rolex. We later found out that his 14-year-old cousin was actually his 28-year-old bodyguard, and he was the son of a Russian diplomat. All around nice kid, though. How did they pass off a 28-year-old ex-military guy as a teenager? The Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime in steel at an only watch showing in London. All the big watch companies do a one-off for the charity auction, and Patek usually only do watches in precious metals. A grand complication in steel is truly a one-off. It sold for 31 million Swiss francs, close to $35 million US. I actually held it in my gloved hand. Whilst obviously nothing like that price, the most casually rich thing I came across amongst my friends, who are all varying degrees of working class to wealthy but nothing overtly ridiculous, also involved a Patek. I was traveling to the wedding of 2 friends. I live in the capital city but they were getting married in the countryside. The bride calls me to ask if I can pick up her wedding day watch for the groom as she'd forgotten to collect it. It still needed to be paid for and she was trying to work out ways to transfer me cash instantly to pick it up, but the bank wouldn't do an instant transfer for the amount. Thinking she was overcomplicating things, I said, why don't I just pay for it on my credit card, then you can pay me back whenever. I joked, as long as it doesn't cost more than 20 grand, as that's my credit limit, haha. And she said, okay, don't worry about it, Mum can detour past and she'll pick it up. At the reception I clocked a brand new Patek on the groom's wrist. He's not even into watches. I bought a pair of scissors for 21 euros and I still feel guilty about it. Being able to spend 31 million on a watch is a whole nother mindset. I wonder if rich people ever feel guilty when they buy crazy stuff. The CEO of my husband's company years back held a Christmas party at this house. At the time, the company was a startup and there was maybe 20 employees. He had original Picasso artwork on his walls. I have no idea how much they were actually worth, but I thought that was pretty cool. I got to see one I studied in art school in a friend of a friend's home. I was in awe. So, like, you eat your Pop-Tarts in the same room as your inherited Picasso? It could be worth millions if it was an original work. He did tons of lithographs throughout his life which range from a few thousand to a few 100,000. A family friend had a lovely little Rembrandt. I wish I'd paid more attention now I'm older. As a kid I wasn't impressed by a dark painting. My high school orchestra teacher, who is also concert master for the Arkansas Symphony, was loaned a $12 million Stradivarius anonymously for an upcoming performance. I wasn't allowed to touch it, but I got a solid look at it, as well as heard it from 3 feet away. Deleted. Concert master for the Arkansas Symphony, very impressive. My sister used to work on super yachts. I'd go visit her every now and again and stay on the boat during off-season in crew quarters. This was about €500 million worth of boat. And it was pretty damn fancy. It had glass flooring and staircases that turned opaque if you stood on them so people couldn't look up your skirt, all the usual fancy boat shit like a spa and gym and movies that hadn't even been released at the cinema yet. I remember visiting St. Tropez after I graduated and just seeing all those super luxe yachts parked up. Crazy money just to have them moored up there, let alone to buy in the first place. Movies that hadn't come out in theaters yet, I forget what they call that, it's like a pre-cinema or something. I work in high-end AV and run into them once in a while. Client never has any idea what it is or that they had the capability. I remember trying to chase down a rich yacht in the Navy. Our maximum speed was no match to theirs. First we ordered them to stop. Then we asked them to slow down. Then we begged them not to get into the port as we lost authority inside the port. They took their 150-yard, 5-story yacht straight into /foreign country /. And we are lucky they were just billionaires. A comic book shop called Silver Snail used to have Amazing Spider-Man #1 on display and for sale. This was back in the mid-90s. Edit, the one on Queen Street. Not a comic book guy, but a story I read a decade ago always stuck with me. This one guy makes money by buying houses, gutting and redoing the insides, then selling it. One day he and his friend were ripping out drywall when they came across the first comic that had Superman in it, Action Comics 1. The guy who owned the building and thus the comic found in the wall was treating it reverently. The other guy wanted to hold it and so it was handed over to him. But he started to spaz out and kept yanking the cover open and closed, going no way. No way, that he tore the cover right off. It went from being worth a huge amount to rather much less. I went to a party at a pool house when I was a teenager. Just the pool house was 4,000 square feet. The kid's grandfather invented sheetrock. Trust fund babies, god damn it, why wasn't I a trust fund baby? Edited in a word. Was their last name Flintstone? My apartment is 750 square foot, totally useless comment, but I'm just so blown away sometimes that entire annual expenditures is easily less than people pay for bottles of wine, and their pool house can fit 5 of my entire living space. Not even including the pool. I don't get why you'd want a lot of that shit. I want a bigger apartment, but geez. Outside of the crown jewels and art museums, I went to Harrods and saw a chandelier worth £50,000. Edit, some people are taking this quite literally. To be clear, yes, of course I've seen more expensive items, hence the crown jewels. This wasn't a grand hall chandelier, this was something you could hang over a standard dining room table. I spotted a gold toilet brush for £1,000. A grand for a fucking bog brush. I raise you the 100k Harrods table. That was fun as a student when I was dirt poor. I saw a £5,000 candle in Harrods. You would literally be burning money. A freshly drafted NFL rookie stayed at a hotel I worked at and partied a little too hard. When checking out he left over 100k in jewelry in the room. I was tasked with going and getting it and securing it till someone from his posse could come get it. I wore it for a few hours for fun. Heavy AF and so fucking shiny. A bracelet that was wider than the biggest watch covered in diamonds, and a chain that went past my sternum and probably 1/2 in thickness, also completely encrusted in diamonds. This is why poverty is such a huge issue with those type of people after they stop playing, because they've never had money, way overspent and then end up poor again. Do you know who the player was? I guess it's not entirely outrageous, but I went to a family-owned aquarium store a couple months ago to get some medicine for my guppies and they were selling 1-year-old arowana fish for $6,000 each. I'm probably just ignorant when it comes to prices of exotic fish, but I was quite surprised considering they were surrounded by guppies and goldfish whose lives are worth approximately $2.50 each. CJ will pay 15,000 bells for that thing. There's a few reasons for their price. They are endangered and difficult to breed in captivity, which contributes heavily to the price. I have always assumed part of it is to prevent people who cannot afford to care for them properly from buying them. They are best off living in a 400+ gallon aquarium, which can easily cost over $5,000 to get one fully set up. They also eat voraciously, grow large and live for up to 15 years. A lot of knowledge and money to take care of them, while guppies can be well cared for in a 10-gallon tank and pre-made flake foods. That's my 2 cents. Goldfish however should not be cheap, since they grow huge unless stunted in a bowl. They are most appropriate for ponds or large aquariums, where they can live for a very long time as well. That seems more than a little steep. I worked in an aquarium shop in the 1980s and we sold arowanas. I don't remember the exact price, but they were about the same price as discus fish, or about $80 to $120. They live 10 to 15 years and get about 2.5 feet long. Once they are acclimated, they are tough. They are illegal to import and we were selling locally bred ones. I suppose with the disappearance of aquarium shops in general, they aren't being bred anymore. A $2.5 million mansion in Missouri. My roommate and I played dress up and went to the showing for the free food. When we asked about the entire first story being stone, including the furniture, we were told it was because the river overflowed and flooded the mansion every year. Everything was made of stone so it could be cleaned easily. And number X200B, why the fuck would anyone spend money on that? Or just, build the house a little uphill? Prince Eric needed a place the in-laws could come visit. This is hilarious in how it conveys a huge sum of money, and yet in Canada in my specific city semi-detached homes are getting to $1 million prices. $2.5 million might not even get you a 4-bedroom house. Our economy isn't even that much off from America when it comes to our dollar, it's just big city prices and the crazy housing markets have reached insane levels. Because moldy drywall. Ew. Bad salesman, I'd have said it was to accommodate the seasonal indoor pool with natural water flow. In Aspen, CO a few years back in a small antique store. We walk in and the guy working there never even acknowledges us while he's casually chatting on his phone. I see a carved wood eagle sculpture about 2 feet tall and 1 foot wide. I flip over the price tag, $125,000. I laughed out loud, looked at my friend and said this isn't our kind of store and promptly left. Aspen is the weirdest place I've ever visited. I'll tell you where, some place warm, a place where the beer flows like wine, where beautiful women instinctively flock like the salmon of Capistrano. I'm talking about a little place called Aspen. Aspen can have good finds though too. I was walking around town one day and it was a lot colder than I had expected, so I popped into the thrift store and bought a sweater for $8 to keep me warm. It looked pretty posh, so I googled when I got home and saw that it retails for $1,200. And goes used for $500 to $800. We stopped in one of those gem stores in Aspen where they always have wooden sculptures or 12-million-year-old fossils, etc. Everything is half off, sign perpetually says going out of business, etc. Similar to your wood sculpture, everything has insane prices, but I can't help but think every single thing in there is fake, but yet Aspen in general is rich as fuck. I have a story that totally relates to that. Used to run the warehouse at a tech company. One day the CEO himself comes into my office. He'd bought a bathtub carved from one huge piece of quartz that the company wouldn't deliver to Aspen where he had a vacation home being built, so he had it shipped to our warehouse to wait on being shipped up there. The thing was about 2,500 pounds and cost $22 million. He was talking about how it was this huge ordeal because he had to wait on renting a crane to lift the thing onto the second floor while the house was still under construction, which cost another several thousand, and how hard it was to time all this to get up there at the same time. The entire time I was thinking, you realize how little you pay me, right? I can't afford my own apartment and you've spent half an hour of my time that I have to make up moaning about how difficult your life is making 8 figures. Wealthy people have an entirely separate reality they get to live in. Jackson Hole has entered the chat. There's a place in Aspen that serves caviar nachos for $120. I attended a wedding that was rumored to cost well over $1 million. There was 2 venues, if I remember. There was 9+ member band flown in from NYC, another strings band during the ceremony, and a third trumpet band that escorted the walk to the reception. An artist oil painted the reception live at the party. The food was incredible. Each table was over the top with guests having their own glass engraved with their name to take home. They gave people dancing shoes you could take home. It was incredible and probably the most expensive private event I will ever attend. I'm sure I'm missing some other details, but everything was over the top. Most expensive party I've been at was a corporate function. They had a restaurant crawl through Beverly Hills with a different course at each restaurant. Finished up at the Beverly Wilshire. After that the company had a private party in Rodeo Drive. Shut the street down and paid the shops to stay open. The whole week was nuts. It was a convention/exhibition in 2000 during the initial internet bubble. One night I went to a party in one of the famous nightclubs with celebrity lookalikes handing our drinks. Another night a company had hired a penthouse suite in some famous hotel and got a celebrity chef in to cook. Wolfgang Puck IIRC. Another company hired Universal Studios Park for 50 people all evening. Another hired QE2 for a meal, or whatever liner is berthed up in that area. It was my first business trip and I was gobsmacked. How did you end up invited/involved in such a massive party? My favorite wedding item wasn't something I saw myself, but an uncle helped run a lavish and expensive wedding for a very wealthy client. The family name is well known in perfume. The guests had to walk between 2 tents set up on the property, with a couple hundred feet between them. Just in case there was rain, they bought individually labeled umbrellas north of $100 each for each of the guests to walk between the tents. It didn't rain. Not to hijack, but also a wedding story. Preface: my father and I run a men's bespoke suit shop. We do a lot of weddings, and last year we had a guy in who was marrying a woman down in Mexico. He tells us later on she is the daughter of the owner of the largest tequila manufacturer in all of Mexico, a company that makes tequilas for some of the largest brands, but wouldn't tell us the company name. After the wedding he comes back to us and tells us the story and shows us pictures. The family rented an entire football stadium. He and his fiancée were escorted by armed guards into the venue. There were dining tables literally as far as the eye could see, each table with its own private waiter. Everything was so much more extravagant than I could ever imagine. I was simply dumbfounded. No one knew how much the wedding cost. Years ago, I apprenticed as a luthier. The shop I worked in was almost entirely guitar repair, and one day a woman came in with a violin. She said it was her grandfather's or maybe great-grandfather's. I can't recall, and he had played in the Detroit Symphony. It was obvious that the fingerboard had been replaced at some point, and the instrument was really old. Like, really old. My boss knew a guy who specialized in violins, so he drove a couple hours to have him take a look at it. The guy told him to get it out of our shop immediately and send them to a specialist in Chicago. He said it was early to mid-1700s, and was an exceptional instrument. Everyone has heard of Stradivarius violins, but not many people have heard of Guarneri, his rival. Apparently, there are still a few lost Guarneri violins out there, and this guy thought that this was one of them. My boss trusted this guy, and I trusted my boss. He has toured as the personal guitar tech for the like of Kenny Rogers, Big and Rich, Robert Randolph, etc. So we called this lady up, told her where to go, and gave it back to her. We didn't want to get her hopes up too high just in case the guy was wrong, and I think she decided not to look into it further. I was under the impression that a trip to Chicago was not financially feasible. I'll never know if I held a real Guarneri or not, but if I did, I held a $10,000,000 plus violin. Yikes. I thought my mother-in-law's 125K violin was impressive. If there was a chance that this was a $10 million violin, I'd walk to Chicago. I worked security at an art museum and we exhibited this little Chinese teacup with a rooster on it. Little ass thing was worth over $36 million. Apparently there were only 4 in the whole world. I felt unsafe around it, like I'm not risking my life for this stupid cup. Did you ever learn the artist, age of the thing, context etc. as to why it was so damned expensive? $10K 20K bicycles. I must have looked poor, because the guy running the place pretty much kicked me out as soon as I walked in. There's a place like that near me, in fact, it's the closest bike shop. They also sell regular low and middle end bikes, too. I could go in and buy a Tiagra-equipped road bike if I wanted, and they probably even have it in stock in normal times. But they also sell the high-end stuff as well. Every few weeks, they post a picture on Facebook with so-and-so with their new $12,000 bicycle. The owner is a really nice guy, and he's highly recommended for bicycle fitting, so I went there to have that done. Took in my 2016 Cannondale CAAD 1-105, which retails for $1,600-ish new. I remember he commented that my bike was probably worth getting fitted. I know what he meant, but knowing there were $10,000 bikes for sale a few feet away, it kind of sounded like he was looking down on mine. I had to chuckle internally. On the other hand, he did say my shoes were exactly what he'd recommend for my feet, and he didn't sell that brand, so I truly believe he wants the best for his customers. One time I went in because I needed a 26 tube for my hardtail that I bought used at a swap meet for kicks and grins. They didn't carry them. 29 and 27.5 only. Don't get me wrong, they're nice people and I like them, but it does sometimes feel like different worlds. Edit, they just posted a picture on FB of a new, limited edition gravel bike. Only 50 in the US, and they got 2. It is a $7,000 bike on the manufacturer's site. Edit 2, CAAD 12. I'm not a time traveler that has seen the future CAAD 16. What did he say? That's kind of crappy. A wealthy couple had a pair of Steinway Concert Grand Model D pianos at opposite ends of their spacious living room. Neither the husband nor his wife played. The pianos, valued at about $175,000 each, were just there for show and when they hired someone like me to play piano for an occasional cocktail/dinner party. Asterisk note, I once posted this comment some time ago to a similar question in askreddit. Asterisk. Did they just hire one person for parties? Seems like a lost opportunity for dueling pianos. At least they're amazing instruments. I, myself, have been able to hear and play a Model D when I was in college as they had one out for anyone to play it. They also had the system that could turn it into a player piano and had that running for most of each day. Those Steinways kinda ruined other pianos for me, sound-wise. Catered a high school graduation party, we did fried chicken and mashed potatoes, so had no idea how we ended up serving food in a mansion. Turns out the daughter was going to Auburn, so they wanted something southern. Out of 200 people there, they ate maybe 4 full plates of food. They had another catering bring the real party food. TLDR, people dropped $3K on food just for the novelty of it. Do rich people not like fried chicken? I'm pretty sure I'd still like that no matter how much money I had. What did y'all do with all the leftovers? That's such a damn shame. What a waste. So this is what people do when they have too much money. I live in NYC and like to be a tourist sometimes, so my husband and I went to the 5th Avenue Tiffany's. I don't even wear jewelry, but I like shiny things and a very nice, clearly bored sales associate let me try on a yellow diamond, 2.5 carat engagement ring. For fun, I asked the price and it was $65,000. I can't even imagine how rich you would have to be to have that as your engagement ring and that be a normal thing. My wife and I were walking around the Vegas Strip and went into Caesar's Palace, just exploring. We were carrying those super tall colorful daiquiris from Fat Tuesday. Basically we both looked like Cousin Eddie from Vegas Vacation. We wandered into an art gallery where they had a collection of sculptures of Cirque du Soleil performers by Richard McDonald. We were the only ones in there so the board curator showed us around. So we're walking around, very shit-faced, sipping on daiquiris and saying very interesting. And we just bought a house for that much. Here's some pictures of the most expensive rings I've ever tried on for fun. I don't know the prices of most but I believe the 3-stone diamond ring was $454,000. You know what they say, if you have to ask the price you can't afford it. I worked with a girl who was married to a jeweler. She used to wear a 5-carat solitaire. To me, it just looked like glass because the facets were too large to sparkle. May have been glass for all I know. I used to work for a billionaire. They love to purchase very old wines, think 90 plus years old, random jewelry for their spouse, a solid gold sturgeon caviar holder, $1M and cars, etc. Generally all through auction at Sotheby's. It was my job to organize their purchases. It was interesting to see what crazy things rich people spent their money on. I may or may not have tried on the jewelry. Is 90-year-old wine even good anymore? Or is it just fancy vinegar? A bottle of whiskey that was $50,000. If you purchased it, it had to be delivered via armored vehicle for insurance purposes. Seems a bit over the top, but I'm more of a $20 bottle of whiskey kind of guy. I play Magic the Gathering. My decks aren't expensive, but they're not cheap either. Normally around $400 to $700. Then I played against a guy who had a deck worth around $29,000. Crazy thing is that this was his first deck, and he bought all of the cards recently. He didn't even play that often either, so imagine dropping almost 30 grand on something that you'll use maybe once or twice a month. At big events, there are people with their decks in a briefcase, cuffed to their wrist. I've seen graded Power 9 in person, not that it is super expensive comparatively to other things in this thread, but it is crazy to think about how much a piece of cardboard is worth. Who won? F-35 and F-22, both at airshows. F-35s were parked and didn't fly, but I got to see the F-22 showing off at a different airshow. The way I describe it is an IRL cheat code plane. It doesn't even look real. I'll add 4 B-2s that flew over me. That's $8 billion that flew over. One time back in the Obama days I was at Pearl Harbor, touring the Missouri. While walking down the deck, a nuclear submarine just rolls on by NBD while Air Force One and a flight of F-35s came in. It was surreal. And while Air Force One is loud AF, the F-35s are eerily quiet. Edit, going back through my photos I realize I misspoke and meant F-22s. Turns out, it has been kind of a long-ass time since the beginning of Obama's tenure as president. Given that time frame, F-35s wouldn't have been around much or at all, though I forget exact dates. Guess I'm getting old. I stuck my head in the F-35 Air Force version weapons bay. Amazing piece of engineering. The F-35 helmet alone costs around $400,000, it allows you to essentially look through the plane by a bunch of cameras placed on the outside. I shook Bill Gates' hand in 8th grade. He visited our school to make a donation to our district. Haven't came across anything more expensive since then. I was in a room with Bill Gates. Me and my buddy at college went to his event. We were sitting near front row and at the end of the event I stood up and attempted to talk with him, but I followed my buddy's lead and promptly left the auditorium. I can't prove it, but the richest man in the world considered for a brief moment 2 college kids. That was my interaction IRL. Oh well. There's always his Reddit amas. Went to Disney World a few years back and got a glass slipper from Airbus Brothers. One of the items they had was a jewel replica of the castle. It costs more than $30,000. And don't get me wrong, the thing looked wicked. But I'm not spending more on a decorative piece that will live behind glass for my own sanity than I spent on my car. $37,500. It's limited edition. It's on my list of things I would buy if I had stupid amounts of money, just for the novelty. That's a third of the total cost of my current home LOL, and more than I make myself in a year. I fucking love that glass shop. I have a couple really nice pieces I've bought myself over the years. It still shocks me whenever I fly and I look through magazines and see ridiculously expensive shit. A gold pen for $1,700 plus that you can sign your death bills with. Those magazines are crazy, but that price for a really good pen isn't that crazy. Check out r/fountain pens. Last year I went to Florida. At one point, we went to the Kennedy Space Center. I was in the gift shop, and, if I remember correctly, there was a chunk at a meteorite selling for $12,000.
Like and subscribe for more Reddit content. Watch the next video at the top of your screen.